common snapping turtles they're amazing animals. I love them. They're so intelligent and interactive and curious. People just have no idea what they're all about. They're not as well defended by a shell as many turtles, and so they need to defend themselves in a different way. And they're very capable of it, much more capable of hurting you than an alligator snapping turtle is. For one thing, their necks are much longer, and for another thing, their jaws are surprisingly stronger than those of an alligator snapping turtle. And so they can hurt you, but I love them. And I've had two in my life that were very, very sweet.
Welcome, adventures. In this episode, I speak with Clint from Clint's Reptiles. I met Clint like everyone else through watching his YouTube videos. Since then, I have had the opportunity to meet him in person twice. Once last year at Clint's Reptile Room, and once again this April at Clint's Reptile Room after it had been remodeled. If you want to learn more about the origins of his YouTube show, the Reptile Room, and so much more, buckle up and join us. Do the music! Welcome, adventurers. Today we have Clint from Clint's Reptiles.
Well, hi there. My name is Clint. I'm here currently in Clint's Reptile Room, which is a location in Springville, Utah, where people can come and have really hands-on experiences with reptiles and a lot of other really cool animals in ways that normally you cannot unless you own them. And it's really awesome. We also do a lot of work with schools and other educational opportunities. We have summer camps, which are actually coming up here pretty soon, called Clint's Reptile Academy, which this year for the first time we have for all ages. And then also I'm the host on our YouTube channel, Clint's Reptiles, which focuses on a few different missions. One of them is to help people pick the right pet for them, not just reptiles anymore, but really, diving into as many of the potential options as there might be and helping you make an informed decision about what is the right fit for you. Because the reality is that while all reptiles and virtually all animals are super cool, not all of them are good pets, especially for all people. And making the wrong choice can be a terrible one. And that was sort of the beginning. I have a PhD in biology with a research focus in education. And so, I have a background in zoology and evolutionary biology. And so there's a lot more that I want to talk about than just helping you pick the right pet for you, though I think that's very important. And in the last few years, we've really expanded out in a big way, really exploring the whole diversity of animal life on Earth, both now and in the past. We devote the entire month of December, the most important month in the YouTube calendar, to dinosaurs. It is Dinosaur December. We do a lot of discussing phylogenies. The month of February has become Phylogeny February, and we do exclusively phylogeny videos in the month of February. And so, we've expanded into a much broader education in animal biology generally. And so I'm really excited about what we're doing. And that's me. Oh, other things outside of what I do professionally. Married to my wonderful wife, Leisha. We will have been married for 13 years this year. And she is the co-creator of Clint's Reptile Room here with me. We have 4 kids. Our oldest is 10. Our youngest is going to be 2 next month. And so we're on a great adventure together.
That's always fun. I have 5 children, as I told you before. But my oldest is 26, youngest is 17. So they're a little bit older, but don't miss that. As they get older, that you got to stay there and make sure you're there for all the different things. I've been to Clint's Reptile Room twice now, once before the remodel and once since, and it's tremendous. If you can get there in Springville, Utah, if you're anywhere around there, please drop by. It's a tremendous place to go. All right, so I always have to ask people a list of questions to start with. So, what was your first exotic pet?
My first exotic pet. So probably depends a little bit on what somebody would define as being exotic. You know, my first pets that I ever had were two dogs. They were Alaskan Malamutes. They're certainly not probably considered exotic pets by most people. And that was just when I was really little. My parents did dog shows with our dogs. Our male was very close to being a grand champion show dog, and then he decided to try to kill me. And so I was, I mean, if it weren't for the fact that we had some guests that wanted to go say goodbye to the dogs who were in the backyard, I don't know if they would have found me in time. And as it stood, fortunately, I was wearing a coat. I was 2 years old. I was wearing a coat where just my face was exposed. And so he just attacked my face. So, you know, he wasn't able to get to my throat, at least in the amount of time that he had, but I had to have facial reconstructive surgery done by a plastic surgeon, almost lost an eye. And I was grateful to have survived it. And after that, my parents, they kept our female Malamute. I've always been grateful that they didn't have the male put down. He was given to a family with no kids who knew exactly what had happened, and there were never any further incidents with him. It was kind of a situation of my parents had him since before they'd had me, and you know, they were on the other side of an electric fence, but I crossed it, and that's when I got myself attacked. But he lived out his days elsewhere. Our female was already pretty old by that point, and she probably lived another couple of years, and then she passed away. And after that, my parents said no more pets. But I always loved animals of all kinds so much, and so my first pets that I was able to convince them to let me keep were 7 bullfrog tadpoles. I grew up by a lake, and I think a different kid had caught these bullfrog tadpoles, and I managed to convince my parents to let me keep them. So we got a 10-gallon aquarium and set them up, and I kept them for probably about a year. It takes bullfrog tadpoles a very long time to develop, and they developed some small legs during that year. And then I exchanged them for 7 crayfish from the same lake. And so they returned to the lake. The crayfish came out. And then I wound up exchanging, I had the crayfish for probably about a year. And then I exchanged them for 3 garter snakes. And so those are my first reptile pets. But all of these things were still things I caught at the lake by my house as a small child. You know, I didn't have anything. Growing up, I was completely on an island as far as being interested in animals and reptiles. I finished a 4-year a 4-year degree in zoology without making another friend that was into reptiles. Like, I had never had a friend that was into reptiles in my life. I had one friend in elementary school who had some garter snakes, and I had one friend that was into frogs. And that was it. It wasn't until I was in my master's degree that I made my first ever friend that also liked reptiles. So I was completely on an island. And I was probably in high school the first time I ever went to a really reptile-focused pet shop, which was Scales and Tails in Colorado, the first location of Scales and Tails, which is now expanded to all over the West anyway. And I went to Pro Exotics, run by Chad Brown, who now I think owns Ship Your Reptiles, and I know that they do a lot with Morph Market. So anyway, went there, and I went to a reptile expo at some point around that time. But like, nothing I had was very exotic. So I don't know. Do these things so far that I've listed count as exotic pets?
Absolutely. 100%.
They're unusual pets.
All right. So what was your favorite, or what has been your favorite pet so far?
That is a really difficult question.
You can have a couple. Most people come up with 3 or 4.
Yeah, probably. I mean, so some that are very high on my list. I love common snapping turtles, and they're something that I had most of my time growing up. Also, was I had after the garter snakes, my next pets were turtles. And I had red-eared sliders and western painted turtles and common snapping turtles and box turtles. And common snapping turtles are they're amazing animals. I love them. They're so intelligent and interactive and curious. People just have no idea what they're all about. They're not as well defended by a shell as many turtles, and so they need to defend themselves in a different way. And they're very capable of it, much more capable of hurting you than an alligator snapping turtle is. For one thing, their necks are much longer, and for another thing, their jaws are surprisingly stronger than those of an alligator snapping turtle. And so they can hurt you, but I love them. And I've had 2 in my life that were very, very sweet. And actually, I have one of them, the one that I have right now, his name is Nipper. He's by nature a fairly cantankerous snapping turtle. But in the last 6 months or so, he has decided that he doesn't dislike me anymore. And he's gotten to the point now where he lets me pet him on the feet. I haven't dared try to touch his head. But it's wild too, because he doesn't like people generally, but he likes me, which says a little something about their intelligence. And he can be mad because I picked him up, and all I have to do is turn him so he can see my face, and then he closes his mouth and he's done being mad. It's wild. It's wild. They're very special, and I adore them. I love snakes. Snakes are some of especially if you're weighing reward versus effort, you can't beat a snake. Snakes are so incredibly rewarding, and yet, generally speaking, very easy to keep. I usually tell people, you can have 1 dog or 80 snakes. It's a similar amount of effort. And my favorite species of snake, I won't say it's the best pet snake, but my favorite species of snake on the planet are false water cobras, which I was only introduced to as even being a possible reasonable pet by Emily from Snake Discovery the first time that I ever met her in person, which was before either of our channels were well known at all. And went up there to see her, and she'd recently done a video showcasing every species that she had. So I knew exactly what she had, and I'd kind of mapped out, here's 5 snakes I think we want to talk about for a top 5. And one of them that was on that list when I showed up, it was in blue or something was going on with it. And so it was like, well, could we substitute something else? And then she suggested false water cobras. So I'd never considered a false water cobra. Like, I'd seen false water cobras at the zoo, but basically when you get your little information plaque and it has cobra in the name and venomous, like, I stop researching whether or not I want one, right? Like, that's enough. That's enough information. I don't like, that's not why I'm into reptiles. I'm not into reptiles because they're so scary and dangerous. In fact, my favorite thing about reptiles is that people think they're that, and the vast majority of them are not that at all. And it totally changes people's perspectives. But I found out that false water cobras, their venom isn't medically significant, or I've seen some nasty bites, to be perfectly honest, but it's not life-threatening, barring some sort of a terrible allergy, which is always a possibility. But to my knowledge, no one's ever been killed by a false water cobra. And it's the coolest snake in the world. And the first time she put one in my hands, it's been all over since then. It was just like, oh my goodness. And I had to get one. And now I've got 2. And so that, snakes are high. And then there's a number of lizards that are just incredible for various reasons. Now, I would, of course, consider snakes to be lizards. But in addition to snakes, tegus are amazing. Tegus are amazing lizards. Emerald tree skinks are out of this world. I'm confident I will wake up one of these days and discover that emerald tree skinks don't really exist. Because why would there be a lizard like that? It doesn't make any sense. They're magical.
We played with some of those emerald stinks when I was there last time for a bunch of times, so those were cool.
And it's so fun doing it every time. It never gets old. This isn't a pet I've had, but it's actually something that I aspire to work with again someday. I used to work at Disney's Animal Kingdom. I had 4 hours a day as part of my job where I was just watching gorillas. That never gets old. That is an animal that I am totally fascinated by. And they're not a pet. They're not a pet I would recommend to anyone, but maybe my wife and I do dream of someday having a gorilla sanctuary because they're special, special animals. So it's a long list. It's hard for me to narrow down.
Yeah, and I guess you've answered the next question, which would be the most desired pet. Or I guess with the gorilla would be something you would look forward to or what have you if you could actually do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the reality is there are a lot of animals that I would love to interact with, but I'm also extremely blessed that right now I have the opportunity to work with a lot of them that I would most want to work with. There are things that I don't have that would be really neat, but I'm not sure that I would trade many of the things that I already have for them. I'm in the early stages of working towards getting some sort of crocodilian and potentially like a Gila monster. I like both of those a lot, and I have a feeling as I get more hands-on experience with crocodilians, I will appreciate them in a deeper way, in a way similar to the way that I appreciate snapping turtles now. The main reason that I want to have those is because I want to be able to share them with the public, show them what they're all about, and it's more for the educational aspect of it and helping people, especially with Gila monsters. Gila monsters are a native species here in Utah, and yet they're greatly feared by people because people think that they're deadly dangerous, and they're just not. We have discovered that there are extreme situations in which a person could potentially lose their life to a Gila monster, but the likelihood of it is astronomically small. And so, that's something I just want to show, be able to show these to the public because, an experience like that just changes people's perceptions forever.
Wow. That's incredible. That's a great information. What was the first reptile show that you ever went to?
I don't know the name of it, but it was in Denver, Colorado, which is near where I grew up. I used to, growing up, I wasn't able to look these things up on the internet, but I always subscribed to Reptiles magazine, and in the back of Reptiles magazine, there was a list of upcoming events, and I was always, every issue that came out, like the first thing I wanted to do was open to that, and is there going to be an event in Colorado anytime soon? So that was the first one I ever went to, though the expo that I have attended the most often, I try to never miss one, is the Wasatch Reptile Expo up in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's wonderful. It's our local expo. It's put on by people who are local here, and they just do such an amazing job. It's so enjoyable. And so I try to support them and be at everyone, and it's really cool too, because I've always loved it. But they have also been really supportive of Clint's Reptiles since long before almost anyone had ever heard of Clint's Reptiles. We had a very small following, but they already, they treated us, with a huge amount of respect and gave us incredible opportunities, and so we try to pay it forward and support them in any way we can. And they just do a fantastic job. Guy and Lori with the Wasatch Reptile Expo.
So is it a 1-day expo or a 2-day expo, or what's it like?
It's a 2-day expo. It runs 2 days, twice a year. They have a spring and a fall show. Always go to the Saturday portion. So if you want to come see me at the Wasatch Reptile Expo, come on a Saturday and I'll be there.
So it's a 2-day Reptile Expo. What are the hours of it?
Runs something like 9 or 10 until 5 or 6, somewhere in there.
Okay.
There's usually early access, and that's when I get to check out the expo, and then the rest of the day is usually a little harder for me to move around, but it's a lot of fun. It's on 2 floors.
Wow, 2 floors.
Yeah, 2 floors. And until I went to Tinley, it was by far the best reptile expo I'd ever been to. And I mean, Tinley's on a whole other level than anything I've ever been to. But Wasatch is wonderful. And especially here in this area, like it's been really fun too, because even since long before, Clint's Reptiles existed, I'd still go there, and it's like everybody knows your name, and they're all, it's an awesome community we have here in Utah, and everybody's there. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I have several types of expos across nearest to me. Like I'm 4 or 5 hours away from Tinley, but I also got a local expo that happens every month, and actually there's like 8 or 9 of them that are within a couple hour drive. So, and they happen every month, but they're smaller ones. And, some of them are as small as 12 vendors, but you go to them and everybody knows your name, and you get to know everybody. And that's why I started off this channel, because I got to start to have all those people on. So why don't we change direction a little bit and talk about Clint's Reptiles? How did that start?
The history goes back to a little business Leisha and I started sort of on accident while I was still in graduate school. So it was when I did my undergraduate degree in zoology. During 4 years of zoology, I saw one live animal in a classroom, and it was hibernating. And that was it. Wow. And somehow they managed to suck all the fun out of the coolest subject in the world. And so when I started teaching at the university, which I started right at the end of my master's degree, I started teaching, and it was like they've got to see more of real living, breathing biology than that. And so I started to get a few reptiles. I mean, I've always liked reptiles. I went and I lived in Peru for 2 years, and so I couldn't have any reptiles when I went there. So I didn't have too many, because I'd been in college before that, but I had a couple of snakes and some turtles and a tarantula, and I had to rehome all of those. I had that tarantula I'd had actually a lot of them since I was pretty young, and so that was hard. But I had to rehome all of those. I guess that was actually before I went to Disney, and then from there I moved to Peru, and then when I got back from Peru, I moved out to Utah, and I was very transient, so I was going from I moved I don't know how many times, because I didn't have any money, and it was the middle of a recession, and I didn't have a job. I was just where I was supposed to be, waiting until I could start graduate school. But I had to kill a little over a year, and so I didn't really have any reptiles. Then after Alicia and I got married and I started graduate school, I had a couple. I had a crested gecko, and I had a banded gecko. But then when I started teaching, I started getting quite a few more, and a lot of them lived at my office. And then I would take them to all kinds of classes. Well, my nephew asked me if I would bring them to his birthday party that he was having. And so I said, sure. And so I brought him, and my wife's whole family was there. And, they saw the presentation I did, and they're like, you've got to do this. And so after that, Alicia and I started a little business called Clint's Reptile Parties while I'm in graduate school. So we had no money. So, it was earning an extra couple $100 a month or whatever. Doing that was amazing. We advertised for one summer. I would just take animals to like a farmer's market, or like I'd just go to a farmer's market or a parade or something and just have a python with me, maybe a python and a bearded dragon or a python and a blue-tongue skink, just a ball python. And it doesn't take long before there's a giant group of people around you who are fascinated and wanting to know more. And so we'd hand out little coupons, and we did that for one summer. And from that, basically, I had as many parties as I had time to do. And they just kept coming in for years and years. And a few years later, this would be in probably late 2016, early 2017, my friends Jason and Will, they're a couple of friends that I made at church. Neither of them are really into animals or reptiles particularly, though Will's wife is very much so. And she grew up in a animal rescue, an exotic animal rescue. And she's a professional photographer. She loves doing wildlife photography. So she's an animal person, but our families were friends, but once a week, I think, every week we would get together and have lunch together. We called it boys' lunch, and they both do things in technology businesses, and I'm in academia, or at least that's where I was, and they would all the time talk about various business ideas. I'd give my 2 cents, but I didn't have a lot to contribute to it. I never really had any interest in being in business myself. And one day Jason goes, I've been trying to think of a business idea that we can all do together. And I said, this is a verbatim quote, I will bring nothing to this. And he said, well, actually, it involves you a lot. And his idea was to create a reptile YouTube channel. Now, I have never in my life, well, at least since this time and since quite a while before this, I've never owned a computer that was good enough to even edit videos. I long would have loved to have done something like this because I love to learn and share what I'm learning with as many people as will listen. But I didn't have the technology skills to do it. And actually, none of us were video editors. But Michelle had the videography equipment that we needed and the skill as a videographer. Jason was willing to learn how to edit videos. And our dream was that we would earn enough money on YouTube so that every now and then our 3 families could get an Airbnb together and hang out for the weekend. That was the dream. At the time when we started it, I didn't even know people made a living on YouTube. I didn't know that was a thing, and so it was just like a fun little project for us to do together. Our first video we released it in March of 2017, and it was the top 5 reptiles for beginners. Which, I don't know what would have happened had that video not been what it was, because it took it a little while to catch on, but once it caught on, it just was off to the races. And it is still our second most viewed video of all time on our channel. It was the first video we ever made. And I think that was the thing that, because you got to realize, we worked for years for virtually nothing, but it was largely at first because of the success of just that video, it's this is actually working. I don't think if that video had waited longer to take off, I don't think we would have kept going for very long. Our second video we released, I think, 3.5 months later. And we'd been pushing the video and stuff on Facebook, but on Reddit, on wherever we could to get it some traction. And, that was the only reason it ever got viewed at all, was because of us pushing it to those places. And we made a video that was a response to the feedback that we'd gotten. To this day, almost nobody has ever watched that second video we made. But as soon as we launched the second one, that's when the first one started to get views on its own. And we started to gain subscribers. And it was like, it was wild. So the second video never caught on, but its release for some reason triggered the first video to start getting views. Another month went by, because this is just how long it took us to make a video. Like, it took us forever to get a video together, because Jason was learning how to edit videos as he went. Our third video we ever made was Crested Gecko, the best pet reptile. That was the first time we used our 5 animals, or our 5 categories: handleability, care, hardiness, availability, and upfront costs. That video was the first time we ever released a video, and then like a ton of people watched it immediately. It was like the first true launch day we ever saw. It was like, wow! I can remember I was helping my wife move into her classroom. She was going to be teaching kindergarten that year. And so she was moving into a new school, new classroom. And I was helping her move in, and I'm just like watching these views come in. It's like, wow, what is happening? And since then, we have released a video every single Saturday and sometimes twice a week, every week since then. And that was still in 2017. And so that's not a short version, but that is how it began. That is how Clint's Reptiles YouTube channel started.
Do you still have the same team of people working on these, or have you moved on? Or
nope, we're still the same people. Right now, so Michelle still does a lot. We've had 2017. So I had 2 children in 2017, and nobody else did. So as a group, we've had 5 more kids since Clint's Reptiles has come to exist. And Michelle has kind of stepped back from a lot of what she used to do. She still does a lot, but she doesn't come to filming nights and stuff anymore. Now, Will, her husband, is the one that usually comes to filming nights. But it's still us. We do now have a team of editors. So Jason will do some editing, but mostly he oversees the editing process. And so we've outsourced editing as much as we can. But, the 2 families, we're all still the owners, and that's the way we see continuing on going forward. We're all still the ones that do it. It would probably be hard for them to do it without me, and I know I wouldn't be anywhere without them. And so I just don't see anything changing.
I noticed that of recent, maybe it's been a year or more, that you've made a change in the way you do things. You've gone to more dinosaurs, you've spread out more than just reptiles. How do you go about making a decision? I mean, when you've got such a big following and you make a decision to pivot a little bit, you can make the original people that you have following you not happy or not pleased or not what have you. How did you make the decision? Because as I've seen, and I'm talking with Bill Strand about YouTube channels and where you're at, and we see all kinds of different people come and go, and whether it's YouTube or the Vine or something before that, people come and go, and if they don't get new, they go. And so you made a change, and it appears to be very good. I love it, and it seems like everybody still loves it. How did you make that decision?
All along, so there's been a couple things. We have always, since the beginning of our channel, experimented with videos outside of the formats that we'd been having success with. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was expand out of just talking about pets. I like pets. I like pet reptiles. One of the things I love about reptiles is, this is surprising to people, it usually takes like hundreds of or thousands of years of intense, deliberate breeding to get mammals to be reasonable pets. There are lots of reptiles that you could literally grab out of the wild, and they would be more reasonable than most pet reptiles immediately, or not most pet mammals immediately, which is just wild, and people don't anticipate that. And So one of the things I love about reptiles is they're some of the only wild animals, and I prefer them captive bred, obviously, for a host of reasons. But they're some of the only like wild or nearly wild animals that you can reasonably have hands-on interactive experiences with on a regular basis. That's almost impossible with I mean, there's so many cool things out there, but most of them, like, you can't hold one. You couldn't just have one that lives at your house and is thriving there, and then you get it out and interact with it and watch it all day. Like, you just can't have those experiences. And so I love those kinds of experiences. Those sorts of experiences are a really major part of the way that I engage with animals. I love animals on a lot of levels, but that is a really important one for me. And so I like that. But most of my life I've been an island as far as liking anything like that. And so I'm largely self-taught. I do my best. I'm good at learning. I'm good at evaluating sources, that kind of a thing. But I didn't feel excessively qualified to be doing. I mean, I certainly know a lot of people who know at least as much as I do about pet reptiles and other pet animals. But where I am, like, actually an expert is in biology generally, especially animal biology, evolutionary biology, organismal diversity, and the teaching of these subjects. I am an actual expert in that. And so I wanted all along to kind of shift to talking more about the things that I'm actually an expert in. And not that I don't want to talk about the other things, but it's like I definitely didn't want to turn talking about pets into my career. If for no other reason than I spent entirely too long in school learning about something that is adjacent but not exactly that, to not be doing what I'm trained in. And the other thing is I'm passionate about so much more. And if I had to do the same thing every day for the rest of my life, like, that would kill me. Like, I always want to be learning new things. And that's another thing is there's some animals, that are pets that I like learn a lot about when I go to, research into them. But for the most part, like, I have a pretty good idea what it takes to keep most things right now. And, and I need to fact check myself on a couple things to make sure, I'm right about a few little details or things, but I don't learn that much. And for the most part, it's like, here's an animal I know I don't want. And now I've done some research and it has solidified that, yes, I don't want this. And I'm never going to use this information for anything else. I love to learn. And so at some point, the idea of I want to go through all of animal diversity, all of it. And, I want to explore how they're related and how you identify them, where you find. I want to learn that. The amount of effort that it takes me to make the kinds of videos that I'm making now is, I could probably, like, we were bottlenecking at editing in the past. If I had the editors, I could have put out a daily best pet video. That would be possible for me. It is a struggle to get out one video a week in the formats that I'm doing, and it's on my end that we bottleneck. But I learn so much, and it's the kind of thing that I most love to learn about, and then I get to share that with so many people. And I sort of decided, like, I'm going to do this, right? Like, in the past, when I would do other forms of, other things, especially things that were more biology and less pets, they would flop pretty hard. And I don't feel, because I'm not the only one who has a stake in the success of these videos, I don't feel like I can just put out flop after flop after flop after flop after flop at the expense of other people's effort. And so, but with these, I'm like, I want to do this. I've always felt like I'll make pet content for 10 years. I'd be happy to do that because I think this is a tool that the world needs. But I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. What I'm doing right now, I would do forever. And I just decided, I finally figured out that even if it wasn't necessarily our audience, that an audience for videos like that existed. And I think that's when I went, I'm going to do it. Even if I have to build an all new audience to do it, I'm going to do it. And the amazing thing was, right from the very beginning, those videos not only did well, they did better than our pet content. We were never close to that. And you know, now when I like, there's a certain excitement when you release a new video. It's like, oh, we're going to see how this is received. I know exactly how pet videos are going to be received. And it is going to be that they're going to do way worse than the other videos, like, you know, that we release. They're just, pet content has become the least popular content we make on our channel, unless I do a video about keeping an animal that is a completely unreasonable pet. If I make a video about a black mamba or a saltwater crocodile, you know, then it'll be popular. But I also know almost nobody was considering getting those in the first place. So this isn't a useful tool I'm producing. It's just edutainment, you know, and that's okay. There's a place for that. But it's like, that's all the audience wants to see, is that, or that's the only pet content they want to see, really. You know, and so I'm going to continue making valuable pet content until I feel like that library is at least some degree of complete. And it's not. Like, for example, we haven't even made a video about veiled chameleons or house geckos or long-tailed grass lizards or brown anoles or countless other super common pet reptiles. The funny thing, too, is whether it be a phylogeny or a pet video, if it's about a reptile that's a reasonable pet or about a reptile in general, that will probably be the worst performing video I can make in that format.
Wow.
If I make a video about a rodent as a pet, it'll do better than a pet reptile video would have. If I make a video about so many other groups of animals instead of reptiles, it'll do better as a phylogeny too. The good news is I like everything. The bad news is I adore reptiles, and so our content will continue to be very reptile heavy forever, probably. But yeah, it's wild as our existing audience chooses not only to watch the phylogenies over the pets, and they choose to watch non-reptiles over reptiles. Well, oh well. What are you gonna do?
How did Clint's Reptile Room get started?
So Clint's Reptile Room, I mean, you know, I talked a little bit about Clint's reptile parties. And so that's a big part of it. Was my life was becoming increasingly busy, but the demand to do presentations wasn't going down. And the presentations are really valuable because they really change a lot of perspectives about reptiles. I mean, they change the way people look at reptiles forever. And, you know, and we were able to go to a lot of schools, and just, you know, you're affecting huge numbers of kids and adults. And, you know, and a lot of these kids are the kind of people, they're growing up in places where they're taught to kill snakes and stuff when they see them. And now they love snakes. And, you know, it's a really important thing, I feel like, but I didn't have that much time to do it. And so part of it was I wanted to be able to train more people to do what I was doing and provide them with what they would need to do that, so that we could do this even if I can't be the one doing it. And so that was part of it. And part of it also was probably right around the time I was nearing the end of my PhD, I found a job listing for the education director at our local zoo. And it was a pretty unusual and advanced set of requirements that they had for the job, and I had them all. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like it was, you know, reading it, it was just like, if I could design the perfect job for me, this is what it would be. There it was. And like, I was jumping up and down. Like, Alicia and I were so excited because it's like, A, this is the perfect job for me. And B, no one but me is qualified. like the number of applicants would be so small, you'd think, because it's such a weird set of requirements. And then we noticed that the job listing was 5 years old and just had never been taken down. And it was like, ugh, just devastating.
I bet.
And then we were like, well, what if we created it? And so, we started thinking about creating it. We started looking at buildings and stuff. I was still in graduate school at this time. I was also teaching as a faculty member at the university, which allowed me for the first time in my adult life to make what the average American makes for a salary. For 2 years, I made what average Americans made. It changed our lives. I mean, we were able to buy a house and cars that don't break down, and well, not as often, and not new cars, but to us, compared to what we were driving, incredibly new cars, and just it was a life changer. But we didn't have a lot of money, but Leisha and I have always been able to do a lot with a little, and we kind of reached out to our YouTube community. We're like, if this is something we want to create, is that something you guys would want to get behind? And so many people were like, yes, I would donate to that. And through incredible generosity, we were able to crowdsource $10,000, and we had $10,000 of our own, which this is not a lot of money, but we were able to create Clint's Reptile Room. It would have been essentially as it is currently constituted had we not decided to do this and get into the room right before a pandemic hit. And so we had everything set up in sort of temporary enclosures. I was going to be finishing my PhD in April. I had taken on a heavier teaching load so that we could pay the rent on the room while I finished up school. So the extra money I was making from the extra classes I was teaching was paying for the room so that we could have the room while I finished up school. I was going to finish, I finished up school in April, which I did. And then we were going to open summer 2020. And for some reason, not only were we not going to open summer 2020, well before we could start construction on the permanent enclosures, the world shut down. The cost of building supplies went through the roof. We had no income. And also places where you might buy enclosures, you couldn't. The lead time on enclosures was like months, years. And so, and all of our money now became tied up in just paying for our rent so that we could hold on a little longer. And so we started, thanks to Jason from the YouTube channel, he set us up so we could do virtual visits via Zoom. And those virtual visits, we didn't make any money from them, but they kept us from being able to, they stopped us from just hemorrhaging money. All we were doing was hemorrhaging. No money was coming in. All money was going out. And so that, that allowed us to survive. And we opened with things not at all being the way that we want. You said, before the renovation and after. Well, before the renovation, that was just like, what did we have? What could we put together? And a lot of the animals were in enclosures that were in my garage that I wasn't using at my house. And now, they're here, but it was amazing because even right from the beginning, and we had to open and close all the time. But right from the beginning, when people started visiting here, even though it did not look the way we wanted it to look, people were having the kinds of experiences we wanted them to have. And last year, after we'd finally been open for long enough that we were able to recuperate some of our losses and actually get things where we could afford to close the room down and put all the money into doing the enclosures and stuff the way we wanted to, we shut down for a couple of months and put everything together and for the first time ever had an actual grand opening. And awesome people, largely from YouTube, came from all over the country. This Saturday, actually, we're releasing a video about that whole event, and it was so incredible, and it lives. And I got to tell you, Leisha and I are starting to plan. This has always been a step in the direction of a grander vision still that we have. And Alicia and I have been planning really, really seriously. And we've got some things we'll be announcing within the next year, within the next few months, that are really big and really exciting about the future of the Reptile Room and Clint's Reptile Academy, which is our summer camps, as well as some other really exciting things coming up.
It goes from a job description that's perfect for you that doesn't exist anymore to making it yourself, and then you get hit by a pandemic and you have to go through all this stuff, but you persist. And I think that just being there the last time, it's so much upgraded from the first time through. Why don't you tell us about the building? The building is tremendous. It was beautiful. It's such a unique location.
Well, here, let me stand up with you for a second. So this is the facility. This is Clint's Reptile Room. We spent many months looking for the right place because the aesthetic and the feel of the room was really, really important to us. You know, one of the things we most want to achieve is we want people who are not comfortable with reptiles to come here and overcome their fear of reptiles. And it happens all the time. And a big part of that is we want everything else to be comfortable so that they feel instantly at home and so they can relax enough to allow themselves to have the kinds of experiences it takes to overcome that fear. And, you know, and this building is unbelievable in that way. And then on top of that, we looked for a building for months, you know, and we were kind of kicking tires to some degree, but we were becoming increasingly serious about finding our actual facility. And we'd talk to landlords and we kind of described to them what we wanted to do. And, you know, most of them just didn't understand the vision of what we were creating. You know, at best, they thought it was going to be a pet store. And we would explain, well, no, it's, we don't sell animals. Not that. It's a place for people to come interact with them. And they're like, okay, well, yeah, we'll get back with you. And we never heard back from anyone. This building here, this is on Main Street in Springville, Utah. The wall behind me, you can see a little bit of it. That is an advertisement. It's well over 100 years old. That used to be the end of Main Street. And then they built another building over here, and this was an alley until 2000, when the owner of the building put a floor and a roof in it. And it's so amazing because it's old, except like the electrical and everything is modern. And, you know, and so the walls are old, the building is new. It's such a special place. And then, you know, we've just tried to make it special. And, you know, the owner of this building, though, when we explained it to him, he was so excited. So excited. You know, he saw the vision. And, you know, he had other people who were offering him more money and all kinds of other things. You know, all he'd given me was a handshake that we were in. And just with that, you know, he's been a huge supporter of ours all along, and we're still here. And this year we're celebrating 5 years of Clint's Reptile Room, which is wild. Wow. Grand opening last year, 5-year celebration this year, obviously.
You picked out a fabulous building. Jen and I were looking all over the place. We the first time we came, we dropped by the day before and took all kind of pictures of Main Street, and just a quaint little town. It's right across from the huge mountains that you can see, and it's got a tremendous view. I took a bunch of pictures of you and selfies of myself in front of it in the room, but we walked down the street, and, you know, just the street has apparently there's different little monument kind of things you see. There's turtles in one spot, and I think a frog or something else we took pictures of, and so it looks like the whole city kind of got behind you.
Springville is called the Art City, celebrating their 100th anniversary of being declared by the governor the Art City. They've got their own art museum, and yeah, the whole city is so beautiful, decorated with sculptures. I mean, you know, you've described it perfectly.
Okay.
And I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. Sorry. I was just, you know, describing what I had seen. It was just, you know, I had to get out there the second time just to see what was done, and it was well worth the trip. But no, it was tremendous, and we're going to come out again. I'm sure we're going to come out every year because it's just, it's like 32 hours from my home, but it's tremendous. It's a great positive place. And I loved it so much. I can't wait to go back again.
You're home away from home.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. And I'd love to make something like this. I don't know how. I don't know. I'm a wee bit older than you, but I still think at some point we're gonna decide to do that. But we have, Herps Alive Reptile Rescue around here. We have the Reptarium 3 hours away. So there's stuff like that I'd have to compete with, and I'm not really sure I want to do that at this point. But just being able to have people come in and check out reptiles and everything like that. It's just a tremendous situation, and to be not afraid of them and to see what they are like. It's just a tremendous thing that you've done for the community out there, and I hope it continues for a long time. What
Me
can you tell
too.
us about Clint? Other hobbies, any other interest, or what else do you do?
It's I have so many interests. Reptiles and other animals have always been my biggest passion, and I've always been sort of alone at that. But the reality is, especially if it's nerdy, I probably dabble in it a little. Um, I last year with our grand opening celebration, I shared a very strange hobby, which is high competitive foam flinging. Okay, with Nerf and Nerf style blasters. When I was in high school, you had to build them from scratch, and now there's amazing options out there. And so that was one that I was able to share. I've shared to some degree that like I like a lot of sports. I don't have a lot of time to watch sports. I don't have all that much time to play sports anymore, but I like all of those. I've been very blessed in the last few years. All my life, I've been a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs. Most of my life, that's been a pretty painful experience. Lately, it's been an unreasonably wonderful experience, and so that's the thing. I love mountain biking. I love being out in nature just generally. I love exploring. I've really been thinking about that. That's one of the things that I enjoy doing the most. And it's something as I don't like to overstudy a place where I'm going, where I'm just going to see some things that I already knew they were there. It's the discovery that's so much fun to me in a lot of ways. And so like even when I went to the Amazon rainforest, I didn't over prepare myself. Like I brought the field guides I would need to identify what I found once I found them. But I kind of wanted to go there with like, I have no idea what's going to be here. Every day is going to be an adventure. There's a few things I know are here, and everything else is going to be a surprise. And I really, we recently went on a trip with my family, and we just drove the Oregon coast, and we had probably a little over a half dozen things we wanted to see in 4 days of driving down the coast. But also, we wanted the flexibility to just stop when we saw something interesting. If one of the places we went was a place we wanted to be all day, we'd be there all day. If we wanted to be there for 30 minutes, we were there for 30 minutes. And that's definitely one of the things that I love the most. I love spending time with my family. My kids are incredible. My wife is the greatest wife in the world. And we just have so much fun together. And it's been such a pleasure getting to do these kinds of things. I've always had an interest in cars. That was something my dad and I had in common. And so my false water cobras are named Carol and Shelby. And Carol Shelby, for those of you unfamiliar, is a very famous race car driver and the creator of the AC Cobra, which is my dad's favorite car. And since I have no real aspirations of having a true Cobra, and I will probably never have an AC Cobra, the false water cobras are probably as close as I'm ever going to get. And I did have the privilege of meeting Carol Shelby while he was alive. And so that was very cool. My best friend growing up, her uncle, has a Carol Shelby museum in Colorado. And Carol Shelby came to an event there one time, and I got to go and meet him. And so that was cool. So that's an additional connection with Carroll Shelby. If you've ever seen the movie Ford versus Ferrari, which I haven't seen but should, Carroll Shelby is I think the main focus of that. And gosh, there's so many other things. What else do I do? Yeah, I dabble anything that's not too expensive. We love to travel. I couldn't really afford to do that while I was in graduate school, and I feel like I've found more cost-effective ways to travel, and we can afford it a little bit more than we used to, and so getting to do, because I love to explore. I love to explore, and I love to learn about all sorts of things. So, I have a lot of interest for the last decade or so in human psychology as well. I mean, psychology was one of the most interesting classes I took in college. My mom has a degree in psychology, but particularly when I was doing my PhD, I was studying a lot about evolution acceptance, and so that involved a lot of psychology, learning theory, and tribal psychology, and so I've developed a real strong interest in human psychology as well. So a lot of things. I find I'm generalist enough, which is actually a part of the problem as a researcher. When people are like, "Why don't you only make videos about reptiles?" It's like, well, I like too many things to only make videos about reptiles. I would grow weary of that eventually. I love art. I love to create art. That was honestly a direction I could have gone in. Earlier in my life, I took literally every art class available to me in school up until I got to college, and then there was no time for anything fun. But yeah, I love so many things. So if you're into something and you want to chat about it, I probably will enjoy the conversation.
That's tremendous. I tell everyone that if I lived to be 120 years old, I couldn't get everything I want to get done. I actually do have a BA in psychology. Before I went to medical school, I did that as my undergraduate degree. So, and then I went to medical school and I couldn't make up my mind what I wanted to do. So I ended up doing family medicine just because you could do everything. And at one point I was delivering babies even as part of my thing. So how would people go about reaching you if they want to get a hold of you?
So, I mean, if you want to see me, you can go to the YouTube channel Clint's Reptiles. You can come visit me in person at Clint's Reptile Room, which is in Springville, Utah. You can schedule a virtual visit to come here, and we can chat for half an hour at a time, very much like this. And those are so fun, and they're the reason that the Reptile Room survived the pandemic. So they have a special place in my heart. You come during our open nights. I'm generally here. You can also email us, though I don't get those directly, but sometimes they get, some certain messages will get sent to me. But probably either setting up a virtual visit or coming to visit me in person. Those are the best ways to get a hold of me if you want to talk to me in a way where I see you too.
We went to see you the first time. We didn't know what to expect. We were so enthralled with the reception that we got and the whole visit that we had to come back the next year and do it again. And you're just tremendous to be around and hang out, and it's just so neat to be there. I wish I lived a little closer so that I could come home more often, but it's such a tremendous adventure, and you're I don't know. It's, sometimes you look at these people and you see they're so popular on YouTube and whatever, and you're like, what are they going to be like? You're just as friendly as you are on this particular podcast or any other time. You're really you. That's just you. And I recommend anyone just go ahead and get to you. So thank you for being here. Any final words you have for our adventurers?
Oh, no, I really appreciate you having me on today. And it's always such a pleasure when you and your family come to visit. I look forward to it very much, and I'm really excited for the next time that we meet.
All right. Well, thank you.
If you enjoyed this adventure and want to be alerted when more are available, please click the subscribe and maybe even the bell button. Thank you.